Hey everyone, welcome back to the Maker's Gonna Learn YouTube channel. My name's Alicia, and today I want to talk to you all about something super fun that we've been experimenting with here at the Maker's Gonna Learn studio. I want to show you all how to use the Siser Brick 600 vinyl and layer it with printable HTV to create a tooled leather look. It took us a little bit of experimenting, but I think that we've got it down to a T, and I want to show you all exactly how we do it. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. So other than your Cricut machine and an inkjet printer, you're only going to need a few other supplies. We've obviously got our t-shirt here. This is a crew neck sweatshirt, Hanes brand. I have a brayer and a weeding tool. I've got some heat tape. I have a couple of mats here. I've got a fabric grip mat, but really a strong grip mat will work just fine, or even a newer standard grip mat will work well. The Brick 600 is a very thick material, so you want a really good strong grip so that it's not moving around. And then I've got the Starcraft for dark materials. These are inkjet printable opaque transfers. So we print our design with the inkjet printer, and then we can apply it to our t-shirt or sweatshirt or whatever you're using, and you can create a heat transfer vinyl decal. You're also going to need your Siser Brick 600. So this looks like regular HTV when you're just looking at it. It's got a shiny transfer on the front, and then it's a little bit more matte on the back. But this is a very thick and substantial piece of HTV. I would honestly say it's probably the thickness of like 2 or 3 pieces of HTV layered together. So it feels really cool whenever you get it and get your hands on it. And it's also very unique to weed, which we will walk through that whole entire process together. It's not hard, it just is different. And then obviously you're gonna need some sort of heat press. We're using the Starcraft 15-inch clamshell heat press. If you've just got a Cricut Easy Press, you can totally do this as well. I would recommend to get a press, or whatever you are designing needs to fit within the parameters of your press. So if you're doing something bigger than the size of like a 12 by 12 press, you're obviously gonna need to maybe shrink your design down. We just wanna make sure that our design fits within the parameters of however big our press is. And then obviously you can have heat gloves. I've got butcher's paper on hand in case we need it, things like that. Teflon sheets work just as well. So things like that you would normally use whenever you're handling your heat press. Let's go ahead and get started in Design Space. So we are going to be using a Maker's Gonna Learn font today. It's called Valerie. It's V-A-L-E-R-Y, and we will have that linked below for you all to use if you are a member. And if you're new here and you didn't know already, we are a membership-based crafting community. We offer inspiration, motivation, and education for you all to get your Cricut out and get started mastering using your die cutting machine. So today, I'm going to be showing you all something a little bit more fun, and I want to say tricky, but it's really not once you get this technique down pat. But this is a really fun new technique, I want to say, for using multiple different types of heat transfer vinyl and also different techniques in Design Space to create a very unique look. So we're going to be turning this word into a tooled leather patch virtually. So what I'm going to do is change this to that Valerie font that we downloaded. And then I want all of these to be in caps. So I'm just going to turn on my caps and retype that. And then I'm going to go ahead and I want to space my letters out because I'm going to be adding an offset to these letters and I don't want them butted up against each other. So you can use your letter space to do this. Up here, I'm just going to bump them apart. And then we want to make sure that our image is going to actually fit on whatever we're applying it to. So we're applying this to a sweatshirt, and I want it to be about 13 or 14 inches wide. So I'm just going to look up here, and you can see my width is at 18.8. That's a little bit too big. What I'm going to do is shrink this down. 13.375 sounds really good to me. So we're going to stick with this size. Now, whenever I go to print this as a print and cut, because this is the portion that's going to be on our printable HTV, Cricut is not going to allow us to do that because the image is so big. So what we've done is separated the first MA and the second MA, and we're going to print them on 2 separate sheets of printable HTV. That way we can make our image as big as we want. I don't want you all to feel limited by print and cut because the sizing does not allow us to print to a certain size. I want to do how I want it to look, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to slice half of the mama off, and we will have it as a separate printed image. If you're confused by this, hang tight with me, and then we will get through it together. So I'm just going to select that. I'm using a Mac. I'm going to hit Command X. And then you'll hit Command V and you've got both of them right here. Now, when we put it on our t-shirt, I want it to be laid out across like this, but we're gonna be printing it separately, so it doesn't really matter where it's at right now on our canvas and design space. What I'm gonna do now is duplicate this. So I'm gonna click and drag, I'm gonna duplicate my image, and we're gonna put this to the side. Just save it for later. Don't worry about it, just sit it over here to the side. Now that you have your duplicated image, we're gonna need to add an offset to them separately. So I'm gonna click on my first M and A, and I am going to add an offset. Now we don't want anything big. I'm gonna put in a 0.1 offset, hit apply, and then I'm gonna go ahead and change my colors up here on the top left. So my offset, I need to be a dark brown, and my text, I'm gonna be using a light brown. This is going to give the effect of depth since we're doing an embossed leather look. Now we're going to come down here, repeat the same exact process. Now that we have our colors set exactly like we want, I'm going to select one and flatten it. And then I'm going to select the other and flatten it. Remember, we're printing these on 2 separate pieces of printable HTV because we wanted them to be bigger than a normal print and cut would allow. If you're not familiar with print and cut, it only allows you to cut 6.75 by 9.25, but we wanted to cut bigger than that. So we made these 2 separate images so that they can be as big as we want, and then we had to flatten them separately. If we flatten them both together, it's gonna try to tell us that our image is too big. That's why we're doing it separately. Now, we can set this to the side. We don't really need any of this right now. What we need now is the duplicates that we made earlier. So let's pull these over here. And then we're gonna need to pull in a paisley pattern from the Makers Gonna Learn website. We're using this beautiful paisley pattern today. It's a mandala paisley combination, very pretty. And what we're gonna do is slice this image into our shapes. This is one of my favorite design space techniques. It creates really cool effects for different designs and different crafts that you make. So let me show you all exactly how we're gonna do that today. So what you can do is go ahead and select one of the M's and the A's, drag it over to the design, find a place where you like, just make sure you're not coming over too far to the right, to the left. You wanna make sure your design is entirely covering your letters. And then we're gonna click and drag and select the image as well as the letters and hit slice. And then as you all know, when you use slice, there's many layers. So I'm just gonna delete any of the layers that we don't need. And a lot of times with this method, people will think that they need to keep this bottom layer right here. We're actually gonna keep the top layer, and I'm gonna show you all exactly how to weed this whenever we cut it with our Cricut. Now we're gonna redo the exact same process with the other M and A. Okay, so just so you all can get the general idea, this is going to be right here. This is going to be our brick 600 layer. So this is going to be a thick 3-dimensional vinyl layer that's going to go beneath our printable HTV. So right now you can't really tell because we're in design space, but this will be the bottom layer, and then these brown letters are going to go on top of it, and that's going to create that embossed tooled leather look. Let's go ahead and make it. So you can see here on our printable HTV, We didn't make it too big to where it needed to go onto 2 sheets. I was thinking it was going to be on 2 sheets, but it's actually just on one, and the letters are stacked. But you can tell if I wanted to do Mama straight across and I wanted it to be this big, we obviously would not have enough room. So lucky for us, we're saving some HTV today, and we're going to be able to print and cut both of the M's and A's on one sheet of printable HTV, and it is an 8.5 by 11 sheet. This is the dark material StarCraft transfer, so we do not need to mirror it. If you're using StarCraft for light materials, you will have to mirror your image, and make sure you all follow the instructions that come with your inkjet printable transfers to make sure that you are doing it correctly. And then for our Siser Brick 600, we're gonna need to mirror our image. So you're gonna cut this exactly like you would cut any other HTV and by mirroring it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and select mirror, and I'm just gonna pull all of this together, and then you can select continue. So let's start with our print then cut. We're gonna go ahead and send this to the printer. I'm gonna keep my bleed on for this one, and I'm gonna print from the dialog box. I'm going to select print. If you're using a Mac, make sure to pull down design space to find your dialog box. We're going to feed it from the rear tray, and we are using the best quality. And then you're going to go ahead and select print. And then under our base material, we're going to be using printable iron-on dark. So you have that option right here, select done. And now we're going to load it onto our mat and feed it through the Cricut. So I'm going to line this up to the top left corner. I'm going to take my brayer and make sure that it is down and secure. And then we're just going to go ahead and cut it. So while our printable HTV is cutting, I'm gonna go ahead and take our Brick 600. I'm gonna place this shiny side down on a strong grip. You can use a fabric grip mat if that's what you have on hand, a strong grip mat, even a new standard grip mat would probably work just fine. And I'm gonna go ahead and line this up to the top left corner, and I'm going to bray it on. Okay, so now all we need to do is weed out our printable HTV. So I'm just weeding out everything around my letters that I do not need. And then we can just sit this to the side for now. Okay, now back in design space, I'm going to need to change my base material. So you're gonna go online and probably see a few different ways to cut this specific Siser Brick 600. We have experimented a couple different ways, one being with the medium cardstock cut setting, and the other one being with the glitter iron-on setting. So the glitter iron-on setting will cut all the way through. It could potentially cut through your transfer sheet, depending on how much pressure you've got your glitter iron-on setting set for. But I think we're gonna go ahead and just do the medium cardstock setting. This is gonna allow us to cut all the way through without cutting into our transfer sheet. And then we're gonna go ahead and start the Cricut. Okay, now that that's cut, I am going to trim away the excess vinyl here using a true control knife. You can use scissors for this, just be super careful not to cut into your design. And now we just need to weed everything out. So we want our design to be 3-dimensional. So I want to keep the lines of my design intact, and I want to weed out in between the design, if that makes sense. This is where an X-Acto knife is going to come in really handy, because there are going to be edges of some of these 3D parts that you're going to need to just lightly slice, and that way it doesn't come up whenever we are weeding. So I'm just going around. If I see any that need to be cut, I'm just adding a tiny little cut with my X-Acto knife. And when you start weeding this, it's gonna make a little bit more sense too. I'm gonna go ahead and just start weeding so you all can see exactly what I'm talking about. One mistake that I feel like I made here is that I did not add a slight offset around the edge of these letters, because I feel like if we had the offset, then I would not have to use that X-Acto knife to come in here and trim around our design. So that would be something that you can go back into Design Space and do before you actually cut out your brick 600. Just add a tiny, I mean, it can be like a 0.03 offset, and that's gonna allow you to avoid having to go in with your True Control knife and cut down all of the edges. And if you're still like, I really don't understand what you're saying, I'm about to use the True Control knife to cut out this M, and you'll really understand what I'm saying then. What's interesting about this brick 600 is that the transfer is not sticky, but for some reason the vinyl sticks to the transfer. So once you weed it up, you know how normally with HTV, once you weed it up, if something like goes out of place, you can kind of stick it back down. You don't really get that with this vinyl, but it still feels really good quality, and I really have enjoyed playing around with it. So I'm gonna show you all what happens whenever I cut out this letter. I just wanna give you an idea of what I mean by adding that small offset. So now, I don't want all of this excess black around here. So I could technically go in with my scissors and cut all the way around this if I wanted to. Or you can use a True Control knife, or you can add a small offset in Design Space, which is gonna go ahead and cut all the way around this for you. And that's gonna be totally personal preference. I wish that I would have went in and added a small offset on this. It would look a little bit cleaner in my opinion, but this is what we're working with. And y'all know in crafting, sometimes we just gotta make it work. So here we are. I'm just cutting right around the edges of my vinyl. Okay, so this is what it looks like from the front, and then you can flip it over and you may be able to tell that this looks pretty three-dimensional. So I'm gonna go ahead, weed the rest of them, and then we will get started on the press settings, heat settings, and all of that. So now that we've got our brick 600 weeded out, I'm gonna go ahead and get my t-shirt ready. So I've got my sweatshirt here. I'm going to pre-press this so it's a little bit toasty before we actually go in to apply the vinyl. So I'm just gonna slide the portion of the shirt that I want to apply the mama to, and I'm gonna put some butcher paper over top of this because we do use this press for sublimation, and I don't want it to sublimate onto my shirt. Then I'm just gonna let this press for 10 seconds. I've got my heat press set to 310, and you can pre-press for 10 seconds. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this up. That's nice and toasty. Now that our shirt is pre-pressed, I'm going to take a t-shirt guide and line up our letters. So you just take this and line it up to the top middle of your shirt. And we will be removing that before we actually press our letters down. And then I'm going to line our mama up here perfectly centered and straight in a row. Make sure you remove your t-shirt guide before you press anything. And then I'm going to put a piece of butcher paper back on top of this. And you can actually put some heat tape on the tops of each of these letters, which I'm gonna do that really quick just to make sure that we don't have any movement. I really do not want these letters to move. So I'm just gonna put one piece on the top of each of our letters. So after you get everything lined up exactly how you want it, go ahead and put your butcher's paper right on top. And like I said before, we have it preheated to 310, and I'm going to press this on a medium pressure for 10 seconds. The Siser Brick 600 is one of the rare vinyls that is a totally cool peel. So we're gonna need to let this cool down completely before we peel off the transfer tape. I'm gonna go ahead and take this sweatshirt out of the heat press, and then you can lay this down on a cool surface, such as a countertop. You can put it in the window, especially if it is cold outside, and it will cool it down really quick. They even make little tools that you can rub on the back of your garment or over the vinyl that will cool it down a lot quicker, but good old-fashioned countertop can also get the job done just as good. So I'm going to go ahead and take off my heat tape as I pull off my transfer sheets. I'm just using my weeding tool to help me get this transfer tape lifted up off of the letters. And you can see that this looks really cool just on its own. I will say that the Siser Brick 600 comes in many different colors. We bought a fluorescent pink I've been dying to try out, and this black I just wanted to use for this one because we got kind of a lot of it. So I was gonna use it to produce this 3D effect, but if you wanted to do only the three-dimensional vinyl, you can get this in other colors besides black. So now that we have our 3D portion down, what we need to do is put our printable HTV portions on top of these, and we are going to press them in the heat press at 310 for 10 more seconds. So now that we have all of our brick down, I need to take all of these and lay them down individually onto here. I'm gonna do this while it's in the press, and then I'll put the butcher paper on top of it and then press it all at once. So I'm just gonna lay this in here, and then I'm going to individually peel off these letters. So you can see you probably don't want to do any type of super intricate design whenever you're doing this. That way, whenever you actually go to transfer this, you'll be able to lay it by hand. And these letters are big enough so that we can actually do that. I'm going to go ahead and remove them from my paper before I lay them, because with the heat going, it may start to curl up our transfer. So now I'm just gonna lay these right on top of the brick that we already pressed on here. And I can see that it's trying to roll up now. And what it'll do is curl up on the edges, and then it will settle back down on its own. So just give it a second. Make sure everything is lined up really well and all of your underneath brick is covered. And then I'm gonna put a sheet of butcher's paper on here, and then we're gonna press it for 10 seconds. Now, your butcher paper is gonna stick to your printable HTV. That is fine. I'm gonna go ahead and move this off of our heat press and lay it right here. And I'm just gonna carefully remove the butcher's paper from the top of our letters. So initially when I pulled this off, I was thinking we're gonna definitely need to do a warm peel. This is HTV, I normally do a warm peel. Well, when I started to peel it off, the vinyl tried to come up. So I thought, okay, I'll let it cool down completely since we've got the brick underneath it, and maybe that would work. Well, it did work somewhat, but the butcher's paper tried to stick to portions of the letters, and as you can see, I'm taking a damp Q-tip and it's allowing me to get off any of this like residual butcher's paper. I honestly think that a Teflon sheet may have worked better than butcher's paper. But you know, I think that the butcher's paper worked just fine, and this still looks so cute and so fun. So you all can see here, it definitely gives us somewhat of a distressed leather, tooled leather look. I really, really love how this turned out. It was a little bit time consuming, but honestly worth it. And you could really practice this technique and I think get down a perfect way that works for you. I use printable HTV for this, but a lot of people use soft flex instead of printable HTV. So you would just cut out the mama in the Siser soft flex vinyl and then apply it on top of it, and it gives you the same exact effect. I hope you all were able to learn a new technique today and you're able to feel like you can try different things with your Cricut, because there are so many opportunities whenever it comes to using your Cricut machine and using design space functions to create beautiful items such as this. If you are not subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button beneath this video and hit the little post bell so you are notified every time that we post a new video. We will see you all in the next one. Bye.